Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent, savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
At the start of this season of Great British Bosses, we're trying to get even more behind the scenes of sport in the UK by speaking to some of the athletes we've had the pleasure of covering on the pod and radio in recent years. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and as this is Anything But Footy, we focus on Olympic and Paralympic sport. In this episode, we want to find out, what do you do once you've made your first Olympic Games after years of trying? And how do you react to potential big changes to your sport? Oh, and who is the Hall of Fame star you go to see on a trip to LA?
I'm Hannah Snellgrove, and I sailed the Ilk 6, which is the women's single-handed dinghy, at the Paris Olympics.
How was being an Olympian then?
It was an amazing experience. The whole thing was sort of mind-boggling, really. You kind of can't believe you're there. All these friends and family that you've sort of talked about, the fact that you're a sailor your whole life, but as a niche sport, you don't get the coverage and you're not in the news, and then suddenly you are, and your friends and family are like, oh no, she actually does go sailing. So it was, it's just really cool to bring everyone along on the journey. And
listeners of Anything But Footy will know that you had that battle really to get there, that this was an Olympics that was well worth waiting for.
It took me a long time. So in sailing, there's only one spot for each country and each class of boat. So I had been, I'd had some good trials, but never made it for a few Olympics, really. And it's a 26-year journey from first setting foot in a boat to finally getting Olympic selection. So I joke that I took the scenic route about it.
In terms of the competition, I mean, not everyone can say they won consecutive races and Olympic Games, but how do you reflect on it? You were third in the standings at one stage, but obviously finished a little bit further down.
I had a very, very good day. Day 3, I think it was, where the wing kicked in. What most people don't know is that my back actually decided that it was going to have a bit of a hiccup the evening of day 2. We obviously tried to keep that very quiet from competitors' point of view. So I could barely walk down to the boat park on day 3. So I was took a lot of painkillers and then went sailing in the biggest breeze of the week. And I knew that was my strong conditions, which I think is why I was so frustrated that my back was this problem during the Olympics of all times. But I actually went out a bit early that day, tried to tack. So we pull kicker on to get the boom down and depower when it's windy. So pull the kicker on, tried to tack, and I couldn't get under the boom. So I had to adapt my tacks on day 3 of the Olympic Games. So I was like, oh gosh, if there's any video of me tacking, I'm going to look like an amateur. So I realized that I could still sail really fast in a straight line. So that was just the goals: minimize maneuvers, do what I called them granny tacks, which is probably a bit ageist, but I am old, so I'm allowed to say that. And then take my kicker off and tack weirdly. But yes, won 2 races on that day. So my social media blew up in ways that I've never experienced before. And then well, it was a tough games for British sailing, but it was a tough games for a lot of people. I think there was a lot of waiting around and no wind. Professional waiting in sailing is what we call it. We're very good at that. But it's very hard when it's the most important regatta of your life and you're just kind of not knowing quite when you're going to start. And the last day was particularly difficult for that. So we were filmed on the last day. So we had cameras, top 10, and I was still top 10 going into the final day of fleet racing. Top 10 had cameras on the boats. Not much wind. We were just under the islands. It was very shifty. We did a race and it was, I was in a very good position and all the people I needed to not be in a good position were not in a good position. So I could see it was light and shifty, but I was hoping they would continue the race. And they didn't. They cancelled it. And then we ran another one, which they didn't cancel. And I had a terrible race. And the people who needed to have good races to get into the top 10 had good races. And unfortunately, that's the sport. And it's about being consistent over the week. So, the last day was quite a difficult one, but I had a lot of friends came out to Marseille. I had like 26 friends who were out on the wall supporting me, which made it a little bit easier sailing in, having missed the top 10 on the final day of fleet racing.
Did you feel being in Marseille that you were very much part of the Olympics, or did you feel out on a limb a little bit?
So we were offering a satellite sport, but yeah, it still felt like the games. I think, you've still got the rings everywhere and went to the closing ceremony and then, yeah, that certainly feels very real when you walk into the closing ceremony and there's just this, blaze of light and sound and you're like, oh, okay, yep, this is definitely the Olympics.
So how different could LA be, Hannah? Because it's obviously going to be a lot more central. And what about the wind? You've also been there this summer as well.
It's a very different venue to Marseille. From a cultural point of view, it's very, very different. It's the first time I've ever been to LA. We went out for a recce trip this summer. But from a sort of location point of view, we're not in sort of central LA, but we're based down in Long Beach, although the venue has now changed slightly. The boards are going to be in Long Beach and the boats and the dinghies will be up in San Pedro. But it's much less out on a limb than Marseille was. And I think the plan is that we will probably stay with some other sports this time because we're more sort of in the thick of it. So that will be very different and quite exciting, actually. So I think that'll be quite fun.
So does that inspire you to get there? That's the plan?
Well, I was always going to kind of think about it over this year and I was going to do a sort of campaign for the Worlds and reassess after the Worlds, and that all went a little bit pear-shaped because I had a collision in Palma, which was our first World Cup of the year, and it wasn't my fault, but the other bit was very good about it. But it turned out I tore my MCL, grade 2 tear of my MCL in my knee, so had to miss the Worlds. So that kind of, as our physiologist said to me, didn't nail that. So then did sort of a period of rehab, went to LA for the recce. I think it's quite important to see what you're aiming for and whether it suits you. And I did feel like the conditions suited me there. I really enjoyed sailing in LA. It's sort of more of a thermally enhanced sea breeze kind of venue. We were actually sailing down in Long Beach because it was before the venue changed to just up the coast. So I think the conditions will be a little different. It'll be a little bit windier where we're likely to be and maybe just a little bit nuanced in terms of slightly different in terms of the tactics and strategy. But I enjoyed the sailing, nice waves. So actually medalled at the first World Cup there, which was really nice, especially because I've been out on the boat for 3 months. So that was kind of unexpected. And then did the Europeans and then sort of thought, well, let's review it post that. So yeah, at the moment, yes, still going. But I am old, so I'm 35 now. So we'll see whether the body stays in one piece. And I think it's always really important that you've still got to be enjoying it and take it as it comes and do your best. And we'll see how the next sort of year or so pans out, I think.
Take it from two old men that remember when sailing at the Olympics was called yachting. 35 is not old and
feels old. I might be 35, but my knees are at least 60.
I mean, I guess there that I remember when sailing was called yachting, and it does feel as an Olympic sport that it's kind of always being tinkered with a little bit. And I think there were benefits in Paris in that we had more nations, we had gender parity, mixed events, I think, the way forward for some people. But for you guys, I mean, there are going to be more changes for LA. Do you know what the Olympic regatta looks like for LA?
There's definitely a move to making it more of a spectacle. There are a few things we do know is that the regatta will get shorter, so we'll be sailing for fewer days. The races will also get a bit shorter, just to kind of keep people engaged. I know that they definitely want to try and do things like starting on time, which obviously you always want to do that, right? But it's a difficult one. Like in Marseille, there was often no wind. So we had to wait, which from a broadcasting window point of view is a problem. So there's a few things that we sort of know are going to change. But the one that we're kind of waiting to hear what that's going to look like is the format, in terms of what the races will do in terms of how they count from a points perspective. So in Marseille, we had, so for us as single-handed dinghy, we had 10 races, 10 fleet races. It's a low point scoring system, so it's quite simple. First gets 1 point, second gets 2 points, etc. You get one discard. So if you're disqualified in a race or you have a bad race, you can get rid of it. And then after 10 races, the top 10 progress to a non-discardable double point medal race. So that's kind of how we ran it for all the dinghy classes in Marseille. The boards, so the windsurfers and the kites, had different formats. So the windsurfers, they had much more of a kind of Jeopardy format where it's all slightly complicated, but effectively you end up with, after the whole week, you end up with 3 boats or boards in the final. And it's just winner takes all, so first person across the line, which obviously from a spectator point of view is much easier to understand than trying to work out points and things like that. But maybe for the athletes involves quite a lot of jeopardy, especially if you've been winning all week. And we saw that like with Emma Wilson, our IQ foil, so our windsurf foiling competitor. She was leading by 31 points going into the grand final. And I think there was one ley line call that didn't go her way. And then she ended up with bronze, which is obviously very difficult for her. And I think also difficult for the spectators who've been watching and seeing someone leading and being so consistently performing over the whole week, for that to then not go their way in one very short race at the end is very difficult. The kites had a slightly more, there was jeopardy, but it was slightly less so in that the person who is in first kind of goes into the final already with 1 win, and it's first to 3 wins, or so. They go in with 2 wins, second goes in with 1 win, first to 3 wins. So there's a little bit of protection on your series performance. So yes, they're looking at the moment at what the format's going to look like for all classes, and I think the move is to probably try and get the format more consistent across all the classes so it's easier to explain for people. But what that looks like is currently still being decided and tested.
Yeah, I remember being the one, I think, on interview duty with Emma Wilson. And it's amazing, isn't it, the Olympics? Because sometimes a bronze medal is an amazing achievement. And it is an amazing achievement, you know. And if Emma's listening to this, I hope she at this point over a year on knows that a bronze medal at the Olympics is an amazing achievement. But when you've been so good all week, as she kind of put it to me at the time, what am I here for? It's really, really tough. And actually, by being so good, I think she was at a bit of a disadvantage, wasn't she, going into the final? Because everyone else had surfed on the course and knew the conditions that day, which she didn't. Do you have a preference on which of those kind of 3 paths you would like to go down?
Yeah, I like you say, it's all perspective, isn't it? But I think it's very difficult if you're leading by that much, then effectively you go into the grand final with something to lose in your perception, which certainly, you've been the top performing person, so it feels like you deserve that that gold medal, because that's the way that sailing has always been. It has rewarded consistency. And so for it to then suddenly not reward consistency is a very, very hard mindset shift. And a bronze is an incredible achievement, but it's very hard if you've been winning by that much up to that point. What's my preference? I think that we have to be very careful as a sport about fixing the right problems. So I think there were some missed opportunities in Marseille in terms of broadcasting. Like, yes, we had a lot of postponements, but often on the coverage, it was just a picture of no wind in Marseille with postponement flags hanging down. And I was really disappointed by that, because my friends and family had the opportunity to watch sailing for the first time. And yes, we can't control the weather. We can control the venues we choose, I would say. But we can't control the weather once we have chosen those venues. And, weather is inherently unpredictable. Whereas Brits, we know that. But it felt to me like such an opportunity to get people engaged with the sport during those postponements. We have a lot of incredible athletes in the sport from such a variety of backgrounds who have such cool stories to tell. And I just thought that it was such a shame that we weren't telling those stories when we had the chance, because, it's a niche sport and we don't get that kind of coverage we don't get the opportunity for that coverage most of the time. So I thought there were some missed opportunities there, to be honest. And also we have such cool technology now, which you can see in SailGP, where we can cover sailing in a way. Yes, okay, we don't go as fast as the boats in SailGP, so it's not quite as exciting as that in my little Ilka 6, but there is technology that we can use that can make it much more understandable and exciting to viewers. So I think we have to be very careful that we're fixing the right problems and not trying to fix problems that we don't actually have. I think that spectators are not silly. And whilst people like to watch a bit of jeopardy and excitement and drama, I think everyone kind of believes deep down that sport should, basically the people who win medals, they should be awarded on merit for people's performance. Sailing has a lot of variables. I don't want to say it's the sport with the most variables, because I'm sure somebody from some other sport will go and disagree with me, but it's got a lot of variables. We rely on the weather, the wind, the waves, other boats. It's a decision-making sport. We have to choose the way that we get around the course. There are a lot of variables which iron themselves out over consistency. And if you take away the need for consistency, then you will end up with more of a lottery in terms of results. And I think we have to be very careful that spectators will see that. And like the response to the IQ foil women's result, for example, in Marseille, was not looked upon very favourably by a lot of people who've been sailing for a long time, because that's not what they're used to. So yes, we want to attract more people to watch sailing, but we also don't want to lose our core base of sailing viewers, who will see it as something so different from the grassroots participation sport that they do if we make it into too much of a jeopardy sport. So personally, I'm all for rewarding consistency over the week, which I know is a purist view, but I think that we can do that whilst also having a little bit of excitement and jeopardy at the end that doesn't completely take away people's performance from the week.
I know we're all fighting for space. Everyone is fighting against the behemoth that's football. That's why we have this podcast. And I know that your British dinghy teammate, Mickey Beckett, described Paris 2024 sailing as an underwhelming spectacle. You've explained some of the reasons why that was, the wind, maybe some of the broadcasting, and I think the Olympics should look at that, definitely. Do you think you're being bullied to change it?
Bully's a strong word, isn't it? I think the landscape's very difficult, isn't it? You can't have sports in the Olympics that people don't want to watch. So you have to make it something that people want to watch. So everybody has an agenda to make that happen. And I think it's just really important that the views of the athletes are taken into consideration and we come to some kind of compromise where athletes are happy with the new format, but the new format will also fit the agenda of making it a sport that isn't an underwhelming spectacle and that people do want to watch at home, whether that's the core sailing viewers that have always supported the sport or new viewers because it is exciting and understandable and relatable and all of those things. So yeah, I think bullies is a strong word, but I do think it's important to take the views of athletes into consideration. So yeah, we'll see what happens over the coming months. There is so much more to sailing than Olympic sailing, and I think we have to be really aware of that as people at an elite level of dinghy sailing. You know, there's yachting, there's team racing, there's match racing, there's offshore sailing. Like there is more to sailing than just Olympic sailing. But personally, I think for the sport, it is very important that it is in the Olympics because it is something for, you know, young people to look up to when they're starting to get into dinghy racing.
Because there's definitely an appetite. I mean, you mentioned Sail GP. I mean, if you saw those grandstand crowds in Portsmouth for the British leg of Sail GP this year, and I know we've got Hannah Mills, we've got Ben Ainsley. These are, you know, global names that the British public know. But the appetite is there still, isn't there, for people to come and watch and follow the sport?
I believe so, yeah. And I think grassroots participation in sailing is really good right now, you know. And it's also, I just think, well, I mean, I know I'm really biased, but I think it's a great sport. I mean, I only got into it as a Sky Bout PE in the first place because I was so terrible at all other sports. I really believe that it's a sport for everybody. Like, yes, at elite level, it can be very expensive and it is an equipment-based sport. At grassroots level, it doesn't have to be. And I think you're seeing quite a lot of schemes pop up that are brilliant in terms of getting people just out on the water at their local sailing club. So I think it, you know, I know I'm biased, but it is such a great sport in terms of there is no genetic prerequisite. Like I was never going to go and be a top marathon runner. Like I'm not the right build. But in sailing, there is a niche for everybody where everybody can be good if they work hard enough. And I think it's very important for the Olympics to have sports like that in it, actually, because it's more relatable to general population. And it's about selling it as that, and that sailing doesn't have to be this kind of elitist sport anymore, because at grassroots level, it really isn't. And then there are pathways up.
And what happens now? We've got some sort of test events that we're going to see how this goes before a final decision's made.
Yeah, so different classes have sort of proposed different formats, and there's a few trials that are happening. So my understanding at the moment actually is that the NACRAs and 49ers and FXs, so the catamarans and the skiffs, are out at their worlds and they're trying some new formats. So there's quite a lot of events going on that are going to test the different formats, and then a decision will be made, I think, later this year.
Couple of final questions to finish then, Hannah. You talked about LA and going there for the first time. Who did you have the photo with on the Hollywood Hall of Fame?
Well, not with him specifically,
no,
but with the star. I found Neil Diamond because he's my mum and dad and my aunt and uncle's favourite. So I thought I'd better go and find Neil Diamond, the star.
And mine. I love the man. I've seen him in concert.
I have too. So I went, gosh, I can't remember how long ago it was now. It must be nearly 10 years ago. It was his last tour of the UK. I want to say the O2 Arena in London. And I sort of went along with my mum, dad, and aunt, and uncle, thinking, Diamond, there's some songs that are all right. But actually, you know what? I had a great time. There's something about 20,000 or however many it was people singing Sweet Caroline and then going into absolute silence. But I said, that was just musical magic.
I knew I always liked you, Hannah. I saw him in Birmingham and he did Sweet Caroline, like you say, 20,000 people. And then at the end of it, what do you want to do when a big act does their big song? You want to hear it again, don't you? You're not ready for him to move on. And at the end of it, he just went, should we do it again? And I've never been to a concert where anyone else has ever done that. So I thought it was brilliant. Sorry, John, carry on with your questions.
No, it's all fine. You reminded me, Hannah, that I went with my mum to the O2 and saw Neil Diamond as well.
We're probably sat next to each other.
We probably were, because I as previously advertised, we're a lot older than you, but I grew up with Neil Diamond Forever in Blue Jeans being played most nights when I went to bed. That's how I kind of remember my my child. So
I love it.
And I think that's the thing with LA, is that it could be a totally different Olympics, couldn't it? It just could be something that is. I think the Olympics website described it as folksy. So it could be a folksy Olympics. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. I tell you.
Folk's perfect for you as well, isn't it, Hannah?
Ideal. Yeah, that's my jam. Yeah, well, I have to say, I was mind blown at how friendly everyone was out there. It's great. So we launched off the beach next to the yacht club out there. Apart from sand, we don't like sand; it gets everywhere. But apart from sand, it was great because we were coming off the water, and all these people sort of back gardens on these beautiful mansions were just sort of like attached to the beach. So you'd be getting changed basically at the end of someone's back garden when you came back in from sailing. And I was like, gosh, these people are going to get really annoyed with this. And the first day after we came back in from sailing, this person had just put this little table out with cookies saying, help yourself to cookies. And I was like, wow. In in the UK, you'd have people saying, get off my land, wouldn't you? But no, they were like, have a cookie. No, it was very friendly.
Well, we wish you all the best of luck in your decision and your continued success after that medal as well that you got in the summer.
Thank you.
And keep us informed with your progress, and we hope to see you out in LA, and we'll share a cookie out there and maybe a Neil Diamond song.
I'll save you one. Yeah. Thank you very much.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.